Order is interps, offense, let's see. Trade-off just add first, then capitalism, socialism, and then Keynesian order.
Okay.
Alright. Everybody ready?
Insert first.
Yeah.
Is that, okay.
Yeah, man.
The government team
wait,
argues that. Well, it's already recording. Okay. The government team argues that the free market is the elephant in the room for the United States, but it's important to look at the analysis that they dropped under our interpretation of the resolution. Is that if you look at the common man standard, if you look at literature, if you look at what Americans just in general think and what the academic literature actually says, it doesn't say free market is the elephant in the room. It says the economic situation is the elephant in the room. If you ask someone in just off the street, if you did one of those funny interviews about how dumb Americans are, basically what you would see is that they don't even know what what a definition of a free market is. They think it is a free trade agreement, which apparently the government has some problem with. But they do know what the elephant in the room is when it comes to the economy. And that's the fact, as Dave Barry says in his 2000-year review, it's jobs, jobs, jobs. And the Obama administration responded to that perfectly by dealing with healthcare. Now let's look at the line by line. The first response here is that the government, the government team said that we're basically ignoring free market. We're actually not, and that goes to the right-wing movement. We're going to be cross-applying this argument to several issues later on. They say that Bush and Obama both are ignoring free market, but the fact that some people are ignoring the free market does not mean that everyone is ignoring the free market, and that's really what we have to make a differentiation about.
Information.
Yes.
Aren't Bush and Obama the last two presidents?
Absolutely. That doesn't mean the entire government.
You would call them
that
some
doesn't
people?
mean. Sure, absolutely. We have to look at whether or not the government as a body is dealing with these issues. That's the idea of stop ignoring. Let's move down to the next argument. They said they're going to drop standards because we didn't say stop ignoring. Actually, my partner did in the first speech bring up a definition of stop ignoring, and that definition was that it's not being addressed now. So basically what we see is that all of our standards you can pull through because they didn't provide any analysis responding to it. They just said drop it because we didn't say stop ignoring. Actually, we did. Now let's move to the next argument. They said that econ isn't something. Econ, I can't read my handwriting. Oh, they said basically Obama's talking about econ a lot. Every single speech he has been talking about economics. Talking doesn't equal addressing. That goes back to our definition of stop ignoring. It means we're not addressing it now. Let's move down to the next argument. They basically said the debate is about acknowledging. Yes, that's our whole argument. It's about acknowledging, and we are not acknowledging the economic issue, the economic elephant. We are definitely addressing the free market issue. Tea Party proves we'll get back to that in a minute. Last argument under interpretation, I labeled it here because it didn't really fit anywhere else and he didn't tell us to put it anywhere else, is about competition. He basically says specialization is good, and that's absolutely true within balance. The reason why there are no free market economies except for a tiny island off the south coast of Asia is that free market doesn't work. It may have worked in 1820 or whenever Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations, but it doesn't work in the modern economy, and a non-free market is necessary, or a free-ish market is necessary to stay as a global leader. All right, let's move down to the disadvantage, the trade-off. He basically had a response here that says turn government solves. Unfortunately, this completely ignores our A and B points, that there is one, finite political capital, and two, that it's stretched as is. At the point where the affirmative stops, or the government stops ignoring the elephant in the room and puts all of their attention on the issues that they brought up in their case, let's look at this: healthcare, trade barriers, subsidies, welfare, financial regulations, interstate commerce. They have absolutely no time to deal with our second impact of Iraq reform. So basically, what does this mean? The economic, yes.
Does the United States government pass 2 policies a year?
The government, it passes some obscenely low number of policies a year.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So basically, the argument here, the response to the turn is that they can't, because they have dropped they can't solve this. They can't turn it back on us because they do not have adequate political capital to do so, because they focus on all the other issues that they think are so critical to this free market ideal that they cannot focus on Iraq, which inevitably turns more of our soldiers dying. It's what, $2 billion a day to fund Iraq, killing our economy, not focusing on jobs, which is what the American people want. Now, the second response was that healthcare is free market, and that's basically cool. Or the healthcare reform, because I don't remember what my response was to that. All right, let's move to the disadvantage of socialism. He basically said that the Great Depression was caused by tariffs. Not true. The Great Depression was caused by massive overinflation from a stock market running wild. We see this again in the tech crash crash of the 2001 and the '08 recession, where the reason for the recession or depression wasn't government intervention, it was the market running wild. Turn that back on them and say that at the point where they stop ignoring free market, they make our economy worse, which makes the elephant in our room bigger. They had an argument about Adam Smith, as I stated before. He's outdated. He's 1820. We're not living in the lands of carts and buggies, except for the Amish. We're living in the 21st century. Let's move down to their first contention. They're about the U.S. not free market. He basically said subsidies doesn't equal trade. And my response here is what I was talking about earlier. The definition of free market in the modern world is that you don't have an authoritarian dictatorship. Free trade in and of itself is a recipe for national disaster. Yes?
Could you have prevented Obama from taking your tax money to spend on TARP, Bush from spending on TARP and Obama from spending on healthcare?
Yes, move to Canada. They completely didn't. They completely didn't address my partner's argument that people don't even know what a free market is. So at the point where the United States isn't a free market, they haven't even provided a definition of what it is. You can't achieve a free market, or you can't stop ignoring something if you don't even know what you're going to stop not ignoring. Their last argument under the first contention was that the Tea Party has no policy. 3 responses here. First response is yes, they actually do have policies. One reason for this is because they're electing representatives to the U.S. government. Second reason for this is because the legislation to repeal the healthcare bill proves that the Tea Party advocates that the government is saying that healthcare is free market.
Clarification?
Yes.
Could you name a senator from the Tea Party?
Rand Paul. That or congressional representative. I said the government, not the Senate specifically. Yeah. Future president of America. Future president of America. That proves that the Tea Party does have legislation. They are not ignoring the issue. This goes back to my argument responding to their Bush and Obama. The entire government is not ignoring the issue of the economy. The entire government is, the free market. They are ignoring the issue of the economy. Third response is third response is public awareness. The Tea Party is not ignoring the issue of free market because it's raising public awareness, which in the American society is key to actually changing governmental policy. Let's move to their second contention. Their first argument under here was that that the government is currently ignoring that we're not a free market. I've already responded to this, cross-apply all my other arguments from the interp and the first justification. Second point here was that we need to acknowledge the free market because we're the leaders of the world, and the fact that everyone would get kicked out of NATO doesn't matter. Turn this on them because the free market kills our national leadership. At the point where we have no protection of domestic industries, we're going to have a bunch of short Chinese geniuses running Silicon Valley, running the financial sector, running Wall Street. I'm in protected time. Basically, what we're looking at is the fact that if the affirmative really wants to uphold this idea of consistency in the leaders of the world, we need to keep the situation that we have, which is neither non-free market nor this some sort of ideal, something that only exists in the minds of living government freaks who believe in Ron Paul. What we're but excuse me, yeah, that just came out. Okay, the last response under here. They said the consistency wasn't always good, and that we need to be a leader of the world. Cross-apply the turn here, basically at the point where they stop ignoring this free market and supposedly try to address it, or at least acknowledge the existence of it. If you get rid of the subsidies, if you get rid of the protection of domestic industries, you lose the ability to be a leader in the world. You lose the ability to influence NATO. Russia is going to take over. China is going to take over. And you have fundamental inconsistency. Vote for op and don't ignore the elephant in the room, which actually is the economy, not Adam Smith.
Good.
Built on it.